Yeah, hello, hi, and welcome to week 1 of Research Project Year 10. This video is hopefully aimed to help you get started and give you a sense of what you need to do and how you can approach this subject. The first thing I wanted to make clear to you, I know some people panic when they're studying at VSV for the first time and are worried about falling behind and all the rest. I just wanted to make clear that this subject is designed in modules, to be in modules, and each module is made up of 4 weeks. In order to get a satisfactory for the first 4 weeks of this subject for module A, you need to be completing as many of the tasks as you can throughout each week, and you will need to be able to submit at the end of that module this task, which is called the written rationale. Okay, and the written rationale, is basically your statement of your proposed research question that you would like to research, and it will be a little bit of a justification. That is, it'll be you giving a reason for why you think this question should be researched, and also you'll be providing some information about some of the articles and research that you've read on the topic. That allows you and to demonstrate your knowledge of what your research topic is and why it is that you think the best way forwards to find out about your research question is the best way. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear that is the goal. And if you're coming in a little late and you're very, very stressed and worried, please just remember that I will want to be seeing this in 3 or so weeks time, or 4 weeks time, for week 1. So don't worry too much about making sure that you're doing every single task in each week. This is your goal, okay? And most of the other subjects at VSV are designed in a similar way, okay? Now, look, the first thing I wanted to do in terms of talking to you about the subject and the specifics of the research subject is just to talk about what is research. I'm just wondering if you could perhaps maybe pause the video for a second and just have a think. What exactly do you think research means? How would you define it? Okay. So if you did pause just then, I'm wondering if your definition of research may have fallen into the trap of thinking that research is sort of like a report on what other people have said about a topic. In your mind, is that what research means? If it is, then hopefully this subject will help you understand that that is not what research means. I suppose the idea that you report on what other people have said about a topic that you're really interested in, that's more like journalism, I suppose, where you're writing a report telling an audience about something that you've read and learnt about. Okay, research is very, very, very different from that. Okay, and hopefully by the end of this semester you'll be able to have a much more complex, maybe, understanding of what research means. To just frame it for you, I've got a little video, a PowerPoint, here that I wanted to just show you with a nice definition of research. Okay, and just going through it in order to help us think a little more in a more sophisticated manner about what we mean by research. So, research is the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. All right. So sometimes we find that when we get a definition of a complex idea, we find it filled with other elements that are even more complex than the thing that we want to understand. Okay. So that's why I've gone through and tried to define some of those elements or concepts or ideas in the definition of research. Okay, so the first one, systematic. So it says research is a systematic investigation. What on earth does that mean? Well, systematic means that you're using a methodology or an approach that allows you to avoid bias as much as possible. Okay, so when you're conducting research, you want to make sure that the way in which you're generating new knowledge or new understanding of the topic is done in such a way that allows for objectivity. That is, you want it to be as truthful as possible and to not fall into the trap of having a bias stuck in there somewhere. Okay, so let's say you want to read about a particular topic. Let's say you've decided that you want to know why it is the case that people commit crime. Okay, but you happen to be reading. It just so happens that you're reading newspaper reports that have a very specific political view, and they think that criminals are just evil people. And then you're reading all of those articles that have a very specific idea they want to push. They want to try and convince their audience that criminals should be treated as evil. Okay, instead of understanding perhaps that criminals are people who might have a different reason for committing crimes. Okay, if you're reading articles that have a particular slant, then it might mean that the knowledge or the new understanding that you reach on the question that you're exploring might be open to bias. Okay, another way is that imagine you're doing a psychological experiment, and you might be asking people questions in a way that leads them to answer the questions that you're asking in a particular way. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you're a female, okay, and you go out and interview people out on the street about questions on gender. It might mean that people will answer in a way that is not an accurate representation of what they really think, because they're talking to a female and they want to make sure that they answer in the right way. They might not tell you the honest answer for what they think. Okay, so systematic means that you're using a particular methodological approach that is also transparent and clear, that allows the knowledge or information that you're creating or the evidence that you're making to be as truthful as possible. Okay. Now, the next bit. It says here, research is the systematic investigation into the study of materials and sources. Okay, so what do we mean by materials and sources? Well, let's start off with sources. Sources simply means that you're reading articles and books and other sources that are written by experts in the field. Sometimes we get tricked into reading or thinking that someone is an expert when they're not. Okay, sometimes that happens in newspapers in particular. There'll be someone who will tell you what they think should or shouldn't be the case, or should or shouldn't be happening. But when you actually go and try to find out what expertise or knowledge that person has, they might not actually have any expertise or knowledge. They might just be a little bit opinionated on that topic. Okay, so you've got to be very, very mindful of the work that you're using or the work that you're relying on. Okay, so when you're doing your research and you're investigating the topic that you're interested in, are you paying attention to who you're reading? Are they an expert? Are they an academic from a university? The article that you're reading, is it something that's been put in a journal? Okay, an academic journal is usually peer-reviewed. Okay, so whenever an academic publishes an article in a journal, it is usually read by a number of other academics who are experts in the field as well, and they all have to agree on whether or not that article being published is appropriate or not. Okay, it might be that an academic might have made some errors, and then the process of having other academics read that article and then giving that person feedback and then having an argument and a debate before it's even published is part of what expert literature means. Okay, so also the same goes for a book. There's a big difference between someone publishing their own book or publishing a book in order to make lots of money and sell lots of copies, as opposed to an academic who might be publishing through a publishing house which has a very, very thorough review process where they get other academics to read the book and make sure that the information and knowledge that's being published is up to a certain standard. Okay, so when you read, are you reading good quality literature, or are you just reading stuff that you've read in blogs, maybe written by other people who have opinions, very strong opinions on a particular topic. Okay, being mindful when you're doing your research about what sorts of things you're reading. Okay. Now, the other point here in this definition is it says that research is done in order to establish facts. Okay. Now, what does that mean? It just simply means that you're producing new information or evidence that will help you shed light on the question that you're trying to study. Let's say you want to find out what is the best flavored, the most popular ice cream flavor in the world. The evidence that you would do is to go and potentially interview people, maybe standing at the front of an ice cream shop, asking them what they think the best flavor is. Then you'd compile all of that information in a way that's easy to understand. And that information, let's say it says something along the lines of maybe 40% of people think chocolate is the best flavor. That information will allow you to draw a new conclusion. So that new evidence will then allow you to create the new knowledge, which is chocolate is the most popular flavor in the world. Okay, might not necessarily be right, because you might have conducted the research in a really bad way, and you might not have avoided bias, perhaps. But the evidence that you've created will help you reach that new conclusion. Okay, and so that brings us to new conclusion. New conclusion is simply that you're adding to knowledge about the topic or thing that you're studying. Okay, so some people get a little scared. How on earth could I in Year 10 produce research about something new? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're creating a whole field of research. It might mean that you're simply adding to a long conversation that's being had on a particular topic or question. So let's say it might be that you're interested in looking at health, okay, and why it is that people eat unhealthily. Now, this is a topic that there is so much research that's been done. You wonder to yourself, how on earth could I say anything new about this? We already know. Well, it might be that you want to look at a particular group of people who haven't really been studied recently. Okay, it might be that the new generation of teenagers have a very different eating habit, some different eating habits, and you want to research them because no one has really focused on that particular group because they've just emerged. And so your research will be to see, perhaps, if teenagers today are eating in an unhealthy way that's very different from how teenagers from, say, 10 years ago were eating. All right? So it might not necessarily mean that you're creating an entire, area of physics or chemistry or whatever it might be. It might be that you're just adding a slight little twist, a little change to a topic that adds a little bit more knowledge or information about the topic you're interested in. Okay. I hope that helps you get started for week 1. And please, if you've got any questions, give me a call anytime. I'm more than happy to have a chat. Your focus for this week is to just think about a topic that you would like to investigate, and then to do some reading and to have a think about what sort of questions you might like to pose. And then as you go through the weeks, you'll be asked to do other tasks that help you structure your thinking in a more formal way in order to complete that final task, which you'll find in week 4, which is as I said before, it's the research rationale. Okay, written rationale. All right, good luck everyone. Cheers.